Okay, so we left off that tangent of angle x equals 1. And in order to find angle x in the calculator, you type in second tangent the number 1. So second tangent, then type in 1, and you get 45 degrees. So what that means is your reference angle is 45 degrees. Now you have to figure out what quadrants you're going to be working in. So remember, tangent is when you divide the y and x coordinates. And when you do that, you get a positive 1. So you're looking for where, when you divide y and x, you will have a positive number. So the first quadrant, x and y are both positive, so that's good. We can use this quadrant. In quadrant 2, it goes left and up, so negative positive. So when you divide y and x, you get a negative number. I'm going to get dramatic and cross that one out as well. Third quadrant is negative, negative. So when you divide that out, you get a positive. So we're going to keep this quadrant. And the fourth quadrant goes positive, negative. So when you divide the y and the x, when you divide a negative and a positive, you get a negative. So I'm going to get dramatic and cross this one out as well. So check it out. The reference angle is 45 degrees. That fits into the first quadrant. So one answer is 45. Then the third quadrant is always 180 plus whatever your reference angle is, and that'll give you 225. And that's it. So these first two examples are super, super similar in that they both had positive values. So they both needed to be, the answers, needed to be in quadrant 1 and quadrant 3. Because tangent, or when you divide y and x, is positive in both those quadrants. Third quadrant is always 180 plus. And the first quadrant is always the reference angle. That's always, always going to be the case. Okay, so why don't we do another here? Moving on, we have to isolate the function tangent. So in order to do that, subtract 4 first. Don't forget, we add, subtract before we multiply, divide. Then, since it's 3 times the tangent of x, we divide by 3 to both sides. Cross this out. Tangent of angle x equals 4/3. Again, in order to find the angle, what you do is in the calculator, you type in second tangent, then 4/3. And this is not pretty, but don't forget, we're rounding to the nearest tenth if necessary. So this gives me 53.1 degrees, and that is a positive acute angle. So that's my reference angle. That's the angle I'm going to use to find all the angles within the quadrants. So make my little coordinate plane here. Okay. Figuring out which quadrants we're going to be in. Tangent is a positive 4/3. Again, another positive one. So when you divide y and x, you get a positive. So that means, go through this with me. First quadrant, you have plus plus. When you divide y and x, you definitely get a positive. So we're going to keep this one. Second quadrant goes left up, negative positive. When you divide a positive and a negative, you get a negative. I don't want that because I have a positive 4/3. I need positive values. Third quadrant goes left down, which is negative, negative. So when I divide a negative and a negative, it will give me a positive. So I'm going to keep this quadrant. And then this quadrant goes positive, negative, the fourth quadrant, which goes right then down. When you divide a negative and a positive, you get a negative. Again, we're working in quadrants 1 and 3. So hopefully you don't mind so much, because when you have quadrant 1, it makes life so much easier. Your reference angle fits there. So that one's always easy. Third quadrant, hopefully you guys are remembering, is always 180. Why isn't it focusing? 180 plus. I'm going back to the other examples, 180 plus. So in this quadrant, right here for this example, it's going to be 180 plus 53.1. So 180 plus 53.1 is 233.1 degrees. Okay, one more to go. Let's do this. 3 times the tangent of angle x minus 3 radical 5 equals 0. So, you know what I want to do actually? I want to change this to a plus sign. Please change that to a plus if you haven't done so already. Yeah, that's going to make me happy. So at this point, in order to isolate the function tangent, again, today we're only solving tangent equations. We're going to subtract the 3 radical 5. You always add, subtract before you multiply, divide. So we're going to divide both sides by 3. These guys cancel out, so I'm left with negative 1 radical 5 or negative radical 5, which looks nicer too, right? Again, in order to find this angle, angle x, in the calculator, you type in second tangent and then negative square root 5. So clear that out. Second tangent square root of 5 gives me 65.9. So that is my reference angle, my alpha, because it's a positive acute angle. So these all worked out really nice. So we have to figure out what quadrants we're working in. So here's what's happening. Tangent is negative radical 5, which means that when you divide y and x, you're going to get a negative. We have not done one like this before. Every time we've divided y and x, we're going to get a positive. So with that said, let's go through the quadrants. Quadrant 1 is positive, positive. When you divide y and x, you get a positive. I don't want that, so I'm crossing this out. I want to get a negative. In the second quadrant, which goes negative, positive, when you divide y and x, you want to get a negative. So a positive divided by a negative is definitely a negative. So that works. We're going to keep this quadrant. Third quadrant is negative, negative. So when you divide y and x, you get a negative divided by a negative, which is a positive, which does not work because we want to get a negative here. So I'm getting dramatic and crossing this quadrant out. Then the fourth quadrant is positive, negative, which goes right then down. So if you divide y and x, which is a negative divided by a positive, you will get a negative. So this is good. We want those two quadrants. Also, I don't know if at this point it's occurred to you, the quadrants for tangent work diagonally. So if you're looking for a positive, you will always be using quadrants 1 and 3. It will happen every single time. 1 and 3 are the ones you use. If you're looking for tangent to be a negative value, it's the opposite too, because the signs are different. And when you divide two different signs, you'll be getting a negative. Think about it. When you divide two similar signs, you get a positive. Okay, so annoyingly enough, though, our reference angle is not going to be an answer because we're not using the first quadrant. So in order to get the second quadrant angle, you have to take 180 and subtract the 65.9. So the second quadrant is always 180 minus, always 180 minus, and that gives me 114.1 degrees. Remember, the third quadrant is always 180 plus. Even though we don't need it, I thought I'd just say it. And the fourth quadrant is the only one that uses 360. So this is 360 minus the reference angle. And you'll be getting 294.1 degrees. Okay. So hopefully these are starting to make a little more sense. Literally every little skill that we've learned is used in these. So be patient with yourself. We're going to be doing these for a little bit because there's a lot of different kinds. So just embrace the ride, people. I know this is not a fun topic. Remember when we were together, physically together, I had said, oh, this is the big picture. I'm so excited for it, although it'll probably be a big letdown and you guys won't love it. I'm sure that's what you're thinking. So just try your best. Ask me questions. Go through the video again, pause it, whatever you need to do. And let's flatten this curve. All right, so stay home, be safe. Miss you all. Bye.